Sadikap. This is the only Thai word I know, and so I will just be speaking in English, okay? So this talk generally, actually, I spend more than an hour if you look at the content. So I'm given a lot less time. I just need to go a bit, skip some of the details. Uh, Also, I've been a professor for a long time, and I often ask the student, am I speaking too fast? And most of the time, the students say yes. And one student actually stood at the back of the class and say, yeah, like a bullet train. So I know I have to slow down, especially if my audience are not so familiar with English. You know? Okay, so just a little bit of introduction about myself. Uh, I've spent 30 years in NUS, one of the top universities in the world. And then a brand new university asked me to go over. So I spent there 13 years. So altogether 43 years uh, in the academic setting, okay? I just retired last year. And I went over to a new university, eventually became the provost. The provost is the chief academic officer, the number 2 in the university. So when I joined SIT, the university that I joined was only 1,500 students. By the time I left, it was 11,000. Currently now it's 13,000. It rose so quickly among the public university in terms of size, in terms of employment and everything, right? And so the government gave me an award, the Public Administration Medal Silver. Silver is the highest you can get as a provost. You get a gold if you're university president or director of education in ministry and so on and so forth. I've been to Stanford. I graduated from Michigan. I've been to Stanford for a year as a Stanford scholar. Singapore has this collaboration with MIT, and a few of us are asked to join that, and then we become Singapore MIT Alliance Fellows. So we teach students in Singapore together with MIT professors. And I'm Institute of Engineers Singapore Fellow, and that's like a very high honor given to people who are in engineering. My 3 children graduated from top UK and US university. One of my number 2, my son went to Oxford. My daughter went to UC San Diego. And my youngest one went to Georgetown first, then did his PhD at MIT in anthropology. And then you ask, hey, your own children are not going to Singapore. Why are they going overseas? My daughter, she's dual citizen, so she's American. And her classmates are all going to Australia, UK, and all that when she was equivalent to grade 10 here. Grade 10, grade 11, they all started going overseas. So she kept tugging on me and my wife, let me go to the States. I want to go overseas and study. So she did. My son got a scholarship from Oxford, so he went to Oxford. My youngest one wanted to do linguistics, and linguistics is a lot better for the school that he went to. Georgetown is like really highly ranked in linguistics. So he went there. In fact, he got into law in NUS, which is so hard to get into. But then mother tried and entice him. No, he still wanted to go. Then he went there. He studied a new language totally, Arabic, got masters in Arabic, went to work 2 years in the Middle East, then got a scholarship from Princeton, no, not from Princeton, from Yale, UC Berkeley, and MIT, and he chose MIT. And he graduated with a PhD in anthropology, and now he's working in Princeton. Why choose Singapore? Singapore has a very safe and stable environment, one of the world's safest country. I always tell people, if your daughter go out at night, 10, 11, 12 o'clock, you don't have to worry, they'll be safe. Of course, low crime doesn't mean low crime. It can still be dangerous if you go to some area isolated by yourself, but generally Singapore is so safe. Crime rate is very, very low in Singapore on the whole, okay? It's very well managed, good facilities. You have good support for international students because we're a multiracial, multicultural society. And so we're very, very accepting of people who are from different countries, different races. Singapore is a very cosmopolitan city. Our education system is always well recognized. The PISA scores were always in the top 3, usually even number 1. And this test students who are in lower secondary school. and that's where Singapore sits, okay, in the world. There are top universities in Singapore, like NUS, NTU, and SMU. We have 6 public universities. These are three of the public universities. Where does NUS stay? NUS ranking last year was like 8 or 12 different ranking. NTU was like in the teens, and then 31, okay? And SMU is in the top 500. Most of the other universities, if they are ranked, 5 out of the 6 will be in the top 500. Where does the tie, just as a comparison, I'm not saying ranking is all there is. Ranking, in fact, is very skewed towards research. But where does the Thai university rank? Okay, Chua Long Gong, 221. Okay, what about Kim Bong Kut University? In somewhere between 800 to 1,000. And so this university rank above them. Like I said, ranking is not everything, but it at least shows an indication. Because of ranking, most important factor is research, but there are other things like teaching, students, the quality of the staff, the job prospects, and so on and so forth, okay? And both the degrees, all the degrees in the public universities in Singapore, well respected. You can go and do graduate studies almost anywhere else in the world. We're going to talk to you about poly. A poly diploma will get you to most universities, except the really top one like Oxford in Cambridge, but most of the top university, if you want to apply to UK, the Russell 23 are the top university. I think rather than Oxford and Cambridge, your poly students will get you there. Okay, the poly diploma will get you there. And they go to Australia, it's a very common place to go. They go to the US. In Australia, they start in second year, provided you study in the same discipline. In UK, you start in the second year, provided you study in the same discipline of your diploma. But you get subject examination if you go to the US. Okay, so it's really a good road. Also, very strong research and industry collaboration. Good career opportunity. I'll talk about the high employment rates we have in Singapore. And Singapore is a place with so all these industries in the world coming to Singapore, especially in finance, biomedical, technology, and so on and so forth, okay? Internship, students who go to the poly and the university, 100% internship. Oftentimes, we have more places in internship than there are students. Why is internship important? Internship, while you're studying, you really are in the industry. You're learning something about industry. It's not you just go there, you actually go there, work 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, and you learn the ropes. And then when you go for your job interview, you really know what you're talking about, and the industry will take you. And Singapore's employment rate is very high. Good quality of life, excellent healthcare system, excellent public transport. Our cars are terribly, terribly expensive. The transport system is so good. You get connected anywhere in Singapore by public transport, by MRT, by bus, and if you need to, you get a Grab or a taxi, okay? And to travel around the world, Singapore is very, very well connected as well. It's a multicultural society, so it's very diverse, very inclusive, a lot of different type of food, a lot of different type of festivals, and that's why we are very accepting of people. Person who come to Singapore, you'll find some community that are from their home country. But more importantly, they get to meet all these other different people from different background, different culture. That's actually much more important as well, because later on, it's a globalized world. You need to know how other people, other countries, how they are behaving, how they are reacting, and so on and so forth. Okay, it's a very comfortable environment for international students. That's the other good thing, fees. Our fees are so competitive compared to UK and US. I'll show you the figures later on. Okay, and there are government and university scholarship often available. Study loans are even available, provided you can provide 2 sureties in Singapore who are signed for the study loan. Study loan, the bank gives very low interest rate, 4%. Now it's probably dropping to 2.5% because the interest rate keep falling. But the bank will offer that to you if you can find surety in Singapore. So again, it makes it very affordable. Okay, I want to give you this slide. Spend a little bit of time about this and let you understand this part that I'm going to talk about. Why is it important? And in Singapore, we have 10 years of compulsory education, all the way, 6 years of primary school, 4 years of secondary school. After that, the students start to stream. There were other streaming here, but the streaming is more for subject and this. But essentially, only a quarter of the students go to a JC. That means go to year 11, year 12. It used to be more. It used to be 75%. It dropped because this sector become much more important. A levels, if you don't go to university after A levels, can you got a job? No, actually you're not. You don't have a good job if you graduate with just A level. But in the poly, they specialize. They specialize into different profession. It's technical, but it's at a high level. And so more and more parents are choosing to go to poly, even if their kids can get to A level. So at least a third to half of the students who go to poly could have gone to A levels, but they choose not to because there's a particular advantage. If you go to poly, you graduate from poly, you can go out and work. Poly's employment rate is more than 90% employment. If you do well, you can then decide to go to university. And most universities will accept you with a poly diploma, both in Singapore and overseas. If you decide that I want to wait, I want to work first, and then you go back, you can still get into a university because of your poly diploma. And if your poly diploma is not so good, then you can work for 2 years and go back to Singapore University because they give you extra points. Okay, so from the poly cohort, 1/3 of them will directly go to university. Some of them will work, some of them will go overseas. So the survey showed that more than 50% of the poly students will get a degree, right? And then here's more the craftsman type, the IT education, 2 years. But Singapore is very porous in this education system. If you go to IT, it's not the end. It doesn't stand for it's the end. Okay? You can actually go on to do a diploma and then continue at the university. If at A level you didn't do so well, you can go back into a poly and do the poly route, which some students do. Because like I say, if you got A level and you don't get into university, you're stuck with a good job. Might as well pick up something professional, right? So our idea is that every person is talented in some way. It's timing issue, and you need to find a place for them. And they could be late bloomers. Don't stop them when they are a late bloomer. You just provide a pathway eventually for everyone. And that's the philosophy behind. We have nothing else in Singapore. No resources, nothing. Only have people. And so the government put a lot of emphasis on how we help our people. Even after you graduate, there's a fund called Skills Future Fund. If you're 40 years old, you want to change career. In Singapore, you can change career. Government pay for 90% of your fees. And we get some of money for us to attend enrichment courses. So even I get enrichment course style fund, which is about $1,000, and I can use it for whatever I want, okay? That is approved by government, of course. Okay, so that's the Singapore education system as a whole. In the public university, autonomous university, they are called in Singapore, very good facilities, really excellent. Singapore government pour a lot of money into education because that's all we have. So the university where I taught NUS, I often have PhD students coming from China, coming from India, Malaysia, and so on and so forth. I haven't had a Thai student yet in the 30 years I taught there. But so a lot of the Chinese students, they come to Singapore. Their hope is that after I do a master's, I will jump ship and I'll go and do a PhD in the US, even not so good university. So I often have students who got a place in the US and say, okay, I'm going to the US to do my PhD. I say you should stay here. Facilities are good, professors are good. And they say, our dream is to go to the US. So they went. And then 6 months, 8 months, 1 year later, write back to me, dear Prof. Loh, I regret not listening to advice. Here is really not as good as what we had in NUS. Okay. Standard of teaching is very, very high. We oftentimes, because NUS collaborates with all over the world, it's so high ranking, right? We often have professors coming to teach from a business school in engineering and so forth. You look at the student feedback, almost always our professors do much better than the overseas professor. The only thing is, I think our professors teach too much. Very Asian. We make sure we want to teach the student everything. No need to, right? You can just give them the teaser and get them to study on their own. But we tend to teach too much. But in terms of quality of teaching, in terms of knowledge to transmit, we're definitely unrivaled almost. Okay. Graduate employment from university is very high, usually over 80%, high 80s, not even low 80s. In some discipline, like health science, it's 100% employment. As soon as they graduate, somebody grab them. You do gaming type of degree from SIT, 100% employment the moment you graduate. Tuition fees are very affordable, especially a tuition grant. I'll talk a little bit about that in my later slide. Okay, there are also private institutions. Okay, around more than 40 of this is shrinking. That sector is shrinking because the government wants to keep upping the quality. Okay, every year they admit tens of thousands, and this is a fallback position. Right? If you can't go to some of these universities, maybe that's a fallback. I'll talk a little about that. I won't emphasize so much. Standards vary widely. That's the biggest one. Once it's private, standard varies widely. And I think that if your kid wants to go to a private school in Singapore, you should pick those in the top 5. Okay, for example, PSB Academy, #1, actually most of the time. SIM Global, MDIS, for example. Let's look at some admission numbers. Okay, Singapore's cohort every year, 42 to 43,000. Okay, in the year 2022-23, for 6 autonomous universities, that means about half, okay, of a particular cohort, 20,000. About 18,000 of them are Singapore students. Okay, so it means that there are places for 2,000 international students, right? So it's very competitive. 2,000 is not a lot, okay, for the 6 universities that we have. Tuition fees are very affordable. UK, yeah, we're looking at Singapore dollars of 38,000. Singapore dollar to Thai dollar is about, 1 Singapore dollar currently is 24.5. Most of the time you can just use 25 as a rough figure, right? And you need to study for 3 years. US, 31,000 to 57,000. It's up every year 8%. And these are figures about 2 years ago. Okay? What is it in Singapore? 7,500 to 12,700. If you take the tuition grant, you probably pay 7,500, thereabout. Okay? Otherwise, you pay about this amount. The tuition grant is usually about half. If you want to study medicine and dentistry, then it's more. Then you pay 30,000 for local, and if you're a foreigner, you pay 3 times as much because it's so competitive, so much desire to go into medicine and law, right? And the tuition grant means all you have to do is accept it. When you graduate, you just work within Singapore or be employed by a Singapore-based company and send you overseas. So if the Singapore company, let's say Singtel, wants to start something here in Thailand, you can work for them, and if you're sent to Thailand, you are considered to have fulfilled your bond. 3 years. That's all it takes. And why is that good? When you graduate, you don't have enough experience. Even when you want to come home and take over your parents' business, it's better you work outside for a little while. Learn from the ground, learn what it takes, and then come back, then you get parachuted in. Otherwise, you parachute in, you're the boss son. Nobody tells you anything. You don't know how to manage things so well, okay? So it is actually a very good scheme. If you go to poly, same thing. You can sign a tuition grant. And if you do poly as well as university in Singapore, you only do a 3-year. That means they just combine the two. It doesn't mean that you do 6 years. So that's, I think, again, very, very worthwhile. Not just for the monetary part, but for the experience part. It's really, really good. Okay? What is the bad news? The bad news is that the program that your child want to get in may be super competitive. Very hard to get in, right? The school that you want to go into is super competitive. Your dream is only to go to NUS. It's super competitive, okay? And more important, the future is that good results not going to be good enough. good results not going to be good enough. Singapore's university do not publish their admission figure, but lots of websites estimate NUS at 5 to 7% for every student from overseas that want to get in there. It's 5 to 7%. And NTU at 5 to 10%. Okay. If you want to go into medical school, and we take very few students in medical school or law school. Essentially, it's very self-selective. Those people want to go there already have straight A's in their A levels, either 4 A's or 3 A's, 1B, and so on and so forth. IB, there'll be at least in medicine at least 42. If they are want to go law, at least 40. Okay, and there are other criteria how hard it is to get in. So they shortlist this and they get this. So generally, to get there, even with top results, to go into those schools is 1 in 10, 1 in 7. That's the sort of statistics. How does this compare with UK, US university? If you're going to go into the top schools, okay, Oxford 17%, Cambridge 18%, Imperial 14%. To go to the top school in US, even worse, 3%, Stanford and Harvard, MIT 4.7, Princeton 4.4. These figures vary from year to year, but generally I just took 1 year's figure and put it to show you it's as competitive to go in the top schools in Singapore, okay, as is to go overseas. And our ranking is as high. Our ranking is behind Stanford and Harvard and MIT, but probably above all this. Our ranking is below Oxford and Cambridge, slightly higher in Imperial, and better than the rest, okay? So how do you come up tops in this very competitive environment? And why do I say that the landscape will get worse as it evolves? Good result is a given, but it's not enough. So what is happening? A rising trend. More and more schools are accepting students based on a aptitude-based admission. The US already does a bit of that, a lot of that, but the British-based type of education, like Singapore, Australia, all that, they are starting to evolve. So in Singapore, for example, NTU, year 2024, NTU admission, 57% of students go through some sort of aptitude-based test before they are admitted. Okay, SIT and SMU, 100% of students we interview. We interview 100% of students, and we don't just use anybody interview. We actually both SMU and SIT, we use professors to interview. So it spends a lot of time, right? But we want to make sure we select the most suitable student. 2 students, the result may be the same. You interview, you say, I want this one, I don't want this one. Even a student with a low result, after interview, you say, this is a better student, let's take him. Right? And what is aptitude-based admission? It means that they use one of these or several of these: essays, interviews, portfolios, subject tests, general logic reasoning tests, almost like IQ tests. Right? Usually they'll use, like law, they will use essays and interview. You are going into fine arts or humanities and so on, they might ask you to show your portfolio. If performing arts, music and so on, they'll ask you for a portfolio. Subject test, if you're going to IT, they'll give you a subject test. Not to test how much you already know, but it's to test your reasoning, logic, and computation, okay? And then some schools like SMU will have general logical reasoning test, right? So it's a smattering, not all of that, but usually 1 or 2 of these, or even more, okay? All medical students or law students in Singapore universities are subjected to interview and other tests, usually essay writing or passage analysis, okay? And what is the impact of AI? It's coming to place. Our students are beginning to use ChatGPT, Copilot, and Gemini, and so on. Okay? It used to be that when you send in your portfolio, your statement of purpose is the most important. So you think a long time of how you write that statement and what you want to show. But these days, with ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot, last time we used the essay judge. How good is your English? How do you use a sentence? These days, you throw your initial sentence, to ChatGPT, say, refine this for me, and it does. And can do it multiple times. You don't like this one, you say, change this sentence. I want to say more of this. I want to have this emphasis. ChatGPT will change for you. So once an admission letter, admission portfolio come, we look at the essay, you can't tell anymore. It becomes very, very hard to tell. It will get worse, right? When I used ChatGPT a year ago compared to now, the quality have changed. They even ask you, do you want it more formal? Do you want it more informal? You want it, all sorts of things. You can get ChatGPT to write what you want if you give it your initial idea called a prompt, right? So making many revisions is not hard. So it becomes a very hard thing to judge. For somebody who's doing all these essays, your statement of purpose as a mission criteria, okay? So what has to go, right? Everybody has good result. How do you make? Most likely, and this is happening also, is that you use interviews. Interview is very intensive, but it is also a good way to judge whether the kids have got what it takes. Because look at the statement of purpose, I ask you questions. If you generate a ChatGPT, you can't do a good job, right? So Singapore is using it more and more. Harvard and Stanford Harvard used to be the one that does it, but Harvard does it with alumni, not really with their professors, okay? Stanford is starting to use it. Most of them are using alumni. Yale, Princeton are starting to use. 2 or 3 of the Ivy League schools are also beginning to use it, okay? Sorry, I'm using so much time. I don't even have time to talk about Singapore yet. I really have to rush, okay? So interview is the most important thing, but interview is a game changer. The interview is really a game changer. I give you 1 or 2 positive examples. And there are also negative examples, what not to do. We were interviewing people for IT. IT 10 years ago was really, really hot. And so many students applied. We look at it, and so I get my staff, all my professors who have to spend 1 week interviewing students. And this guy who is in charge of IT came to me and said, I interviewed this student. He was so keen to go into software engineering, but his result was really nearer the bottom of those who applied. And if we take the top 1/3 or whatever, he won't qualify. But he said, I told the student, why do you want to do IT? So many students want to do IT. He said, sir, I'm so interested. I started my own IT company. So he said, okay, based on this year's and whatever your results and everything, you won't qualify. But next year, by next year, if you survive, your company survive, and IT software, he is not from a rich family, so he's doing a lot of work himself. If your company still survive, come back and reapply, we'll consider you. And he told me, can I take him? Can I say that? I said, of course. Next year he came back. He did get, his company still survived. So we took him. Happy story is that he graduated. He didn't graduate top of class. It's not a miracle, right? He's already originally didn't qualify for class. But he graduated at the middle of class because he was so interested. So a student interest. So one of the things to do is discover the child's interest. If he's interested, he will put in effort. He will do well. Because by the time you go to university, it's already a narrow field, not a wide field. When you're in school, it's a general field. So once you specialize, you can do really well. It can be a game changer, okay? Interview is very important. I have a parent come to me and say, my son is applying for this school. I know interview is important for them. Can you give him a pointer? So I spoke to him. I chit-chat with him. Hey, nothing outstanding, just the usual answer. Then I say, what did you do outside school? He said, what's your interest? You want to do mechanical engineering. What are you interested in? He said, I help my parents repair old car. I know his father has got a lot of vintage car. I help my parents when he repair vintage car. I talked to him a bit more. I know that he really did it. I said, this is what you need to bring out in the interview. Because in the interview, they realize that you have an interest and you're really able to do what you say you're doing. Help your father repair an old car. A week later, father called me back and said, thanks to you. I don't know whether it's thanks whether he have gotten it anyway. He said, thanks to you, my son got into the school. Okay? Increasingly, people are using professors and other graduate students. That's what Crimson does, right? You get people to do research. Hopefully, you can publish in a low-tier journal, or at least you can write in in your application letter that I did this research, either under this professor, under this is my finding. And then in the interview, of course, they'll ask you, and if you really did it, you can really talk about it. And that's another way to attract. So more and more parents are spending big money in UK and US to do this, okay? I really run out of time. Yeah. The children can go. Okay, okay, those children can go earlier, and hopefully the parents can stay a bit longer if you're interested, right? Okay. Okay. So there are structural differences between UK and US university. So you want to ask yourself, if I want to send my kid overseas, which one should I choose and how? There are structural differences, and the other countries all fall in between. UK is one extreme, the US is the other extreme. Australia and Singapore was nearer the UK side. Singapore is moving more and more towards the US side. Okay, and so when I just explained the two extremes, you can imagine what is. Canada will be a bit nearer to US. Okay, so what are the main differences? The structure is that UK is much more specialized. Medicine, dentistry, law, some vet science, all these are undergrad degree. You're available as undergraduate degree. Usually 3 years, 4 years, you get an honors. Okay, and usually final year is a very big research project of some sort. Okay, the US system, very broad curriculum. First 2 years you do common, you can do almost anything. Okay, my daughter went there every semester, every half a year, she declared a different major because she couldn't make up her mind. She kept doing different things that she thinks she liked. She started psychology, then she wanted to do education, then she wanted to do mathematics, and then she ended up doing management of information system. And when she finally decided management of information system, no loss of time because the first year considered common base. So long as you choose subject that can be chosen as an elective in another department, you're fine. So she graduated 4 years, the usual. But she did that, okay? You want to do medicine, law, dentistry, vet science, these are all graduate programs. Usually, you go to US, unless you get exemptions, you're doing a full 4 year. US system is that you can do in 3 years if you do all the summer school. You can do 5 years, you can take your time. Because the US, the different education system is like, a UK system is like running a sprint, 100 meter. Who run first, get a first class. The next group of students get the second upper, next group get second lower. It's all the same timing. If you go to US, it's like running a marathon, so long as you finish your journey. You want to run fast? You want to do fast? You do more subjects. You cover the curriculum. You want to take your time? You can take 5, 6, 7 years. So long as you're paying fees, it's okay because they pay by subject. Application in UK through a UCAS system up to 5 schools. Okay, offers admission based on your final grade in year 12, and then you need a personal statement. You need a reference letter. I'll quickly go through some of this, right? Just very quickly. US efficient ways to go the common application, although you can apply individually in school. But common application doesn't mean one application does it all, because the schools will ask you for supplementary essays. And then every school you apply also costs money. Okay, but it's efficient because you do a general one and then you do a specific one just for the particular school you want to apply for. Okay, and US is much more holistic. They look not just at a score, they look at work experience, look at letters of recommendation, and so on and so forth. And some schools allow you to decide on early decision, early action. They are different. It means you have to apply earlier, and depending on which you choose, the school give you a place, you must go. You cannot go to anywhere else. And some allow you to change, but then it's also different competition. So US is much more flexible, much more complicated. Okay, teaching and assessment. Teaching is usually lecture style in the UK, lecture and tutorial, and then assessment is frequently only through end of year exam. Now UK is more and more one semester. The most extreme is Oxford and Cambridge. You do 3 years of exams, usually end of year every year, but your final honors is only decided by your third year final exam, nothing else. You can be doing first class honor all the way, and then your final exam, you fumble, you get a second lower. That's the way Oxford and Cambridge does, okay? US is continuous assessment. When I went to US to study, third week there's already a quiz. I enter the class, before I warm up already, third week there's a quiz. All the quiz are counted, okay? So they graduate by credit hours that you accumulate, and the honors based on the grades you get. And so it's much more flexible. You can take longer, you can take shorter. I know a student who really every semester attend 5 classes but only choose 3 for the final grade. And then and he's allowed, he has an add drop. And he does an add drop before the thing. He go to a class and say, is this going to be an easy class? Okay. And so he got a straight 4.0 GPA when he did his undergraduate. Then he went to PhD. Of course, he can't do that anymore. Every class, you can't do that and still hope to score, right? But at least he got to do his PhD. So apply to UK, efficient way, go to UCAS. They convert your certificate grades and all that into a score, and use the score to compare different country, different system, whether it's an IB, whether it's A levels or whatever. Okay, there are deadlines for certain things. If you want to go to Oxford, Cambridge, it has to be earlier, the submission. Okay, and if you go to Oxford and Cambridge, you can only choose either Oxford or Cambridge. You can't apply for both. Okay, you apply for 5 schools, but if you, let's say, decide to go to Cambridge, engineering and business, then that counts as 2 applications. So you can only apply up to 5 if you go to UK. This what is called the Russell Group. This is the top 23 universities in UK. It used to be Russell 28 when many years ago. Now they have shrunk to 23 universities Russell. And not just a ranking, right? You want to look at this school, what is it good for? For example, if you go to Warwick, they combine engineering and business very well. So you find the engineering students, Dyson, Dyson vacuum cleaner, he's actually from Warwick. And Warwick is very good in terms of how they combine business with engineering, and so on and so forth. Oxford and Cambridge, much more academic, but very high standard, very rigorous, right? So you want to choose according to what? How about the US? How many universities? US, 5,000 institutions of higher learning. Every year you check, it's a different number. Why? University open and close. University merge. It's become very hard in US. The competition such that university have to merge. And university closed down. University open up. Trump's family is known to open a few universities, cheat people the money, give them money. So watch out, no? Watch out if you want to go US. Make sure it's a reputable one. Otherwise, you get a degree, it's worth nothing. It's just a paper mill. You pay the fees, you get a degree, but it's useless. Okay? And one way to do that, for example, at US, is actually do a community college. You go to a community college, do 2 years, and then with very good results there, you apply to a university and start in the 3rd year. So that's another route. But it's a bit like our poly. Our poly you study is not the same as A level, but our poly is actually an overlap of that, and you can actually go to 2nd year in a foreign university. Okay? Selecting university, don't just consider ranking, don't just think of top schools. There are so many other good schools you can do. You need to really understand about the schools. My son could have gone to very, very good school, much better than the one he chose in Georgetown. But he went for that because it's the #1 linguistic program with a foreign affairs portion. And he was very happy there, right? He chose it because next to it, there's a school that teaches sign language. My son can sign. He can sign, as I talk, he could sign for me. That's how good he is in signing. And he chose it because he said, I can further my own interest in sign language because the best sign language school is just beside Georgetown. So you need to understand what your child like and what's the school, what are the characteristics. Oftentimes you can write to seniors from the same school. These days, the internet, email, you can actually get more information. So he chose, when he given a 3 scholarship for his PhD, he wrote to students that he find out about the professors. He spent a month just choosing which scholarship he wanted. And he chose MIT. Okay, so the first summary is hard to get into top universities in the world. If you want to, If you only have a dream for one university, for example, here you say, my child must only go into Chulalongkorn, you're going to have a hard time. Okay? It's harder in the top universities in the world. Okay? But nobody can guarantee you a place. If people say they can guarantee a place, they're almost lying, at least for a top school. Okay? But you need to start thinking about it early. I think by the time I also say don't really start at primary school. Let them enjoy a bit more what they want. But slowly you need to figure out what they want, get them interested in things, let them try different things. A mentor can help them tease out. That's one of the things I do. I help the student tease out what is it that they like. Sometimes a lot of time at 16, 18, they don't know what they want. But you tease out what they like. You find what is their talent and what they like, and then you can go